Not one man who participated in that terrible raid could ever be induced to say a word concerning it, and every fragment of the vague idea which survives comes from those outside the final fighting party. There is something frightful in the care with which these actual raiders destroyed such scraps which bore the least allusion to the matter. 8 sailors had been killed, but although their bodies were not produced, their families were satisfied with a statement that a clash with customs officers had occurred. The same statement also covered the numerous cases of wounds, all of which were extensively bandaged and treated only by Dr. Jabez Bowen, who had accompanied the party. Hardest to explain was the nameless odor clinging to all the raiders, a thing which was discussed for weeks. Of the citizen leaders, Captain Whipple and Moses Brown were most severely hurt, and letters of their wives testifying the bewilderment which the reticence and close guarding of their bandages produced. Psychologically, even every participant was aged, sobered, and shaken. It is fortunate that they were all strong men of action and simple orthodox religionists, for, with more subtle introspectiveness and mental complexity, they would have fared ill indeed. Well, what's orthodox is really not according to whatever particular label of religion they are, but it varies per religion. I mean, what is said to be orthodox, so not everybody's simple-minded. Some faiths, maybe. Present Manning was the most disturbed, but even he outgrew the darkest shadow and smothered memories and prayers. Every man of those leaders had a stirring part to play in the latter years, and it is perhaps fortunate that this is so. Little more than a 12th month afterward, Captain Whipple led the mob who burnt the revenue ship Gaspee, and in this bold act we may trace one step in the blotting out of unwholesome images. There was delivered to the window of Joseph Curwen a sealed leaden coffin of curious design, obviously found ready on the spot when needed, in which she was told her husband's body lay, and had, it was explained, been killed in a customs battle about which it was not polite to give details. More than this, no tongue ever uttered of Joseph Curwen's end, and Charles Ward had only a single hint wherewith to construct the theory. This hint was the merest thread, a shaky underscoring of a passage in Jedediah Orne's confiscated letter to Curwen, partially copied in Ezra Whedon's handwriting. The copy was found in the possession of Smith's descendants, and we are left to decide whether Whedon gave it to his companion after the end as a mute clue to the abnormality which had occurred, or whether it is more probable Smith had it before and added the underscoring himself from what he had managed to extract from his friend by shrewd guessing and adroit cross-questioning. The underlined passage is merely this: I say to you again, do not call up anything that ye cannot put down, but by the which I mean any that can in turn call up somewhat against you, whereby your powerfulest devices may not be of use. Acts of the lesser, lest the greater, shall not wish to answer, and shall command more than you. Well, typical polytheism, right? In the light of the and sort of the justification behind the whole angel and saint worship by some Christians. Well, the supposed justification, anyways. In the light of this passage, and reflecting on what lost, unmentionable allies a beaten man might try to summon his direst extremity, Charles Ward may well have wondered whether any citizen of Providence killed Joseph Curwen. The deliberate effacement of every memory of the dead man from Providence life and annals was vastly aided by the influence of the raiding leaders. They had not at first meant to be so thorough, and had allowed the widow and her father and child remain in ignorance of the true conditions. But Captain Tillinghast was an astute man, and soon uncovered enough rumors to whet his horror, and cause him to demand that his daughter and granddaughter change their names, burn the library and all the remaining papers, and chisel the inscription from the state slab above Joseph Curwen's grave. He knew Captain Whipple well, and probably extracted more hints from that bluff mariner than anyone else ever gained respecting the end of the accursed sorcerer. From that time on, the obliteration of Curwen's memory became increasingly rigid, extending at last, by common consent, even to the town records and files of the Gazette. It can be compared in spirit only to the hush that lay on Osterwild's name for a decade after his disgrace, and in extent only to the fate of that sinful king of Brunagur in Lord Dunsany's tale, whom those considered gods decided must not only cease to be, but must cease to ever have been. Mrs. Tillinghast, as the widow became known after 1772, sold the house in Olney Court and resided with her father in Powers Lane till her death in 1817. The farm at Powtuxet, shunned by every living soul, remained to moulder through the years and seemed to decay with unaccountable rapidity. By 1780, only the stone and brickwork were standing, and by 1800, even these had fallen to shapeless heaps. None ventured to pierce the tangled shrubbery on the river bank behind, which the hillside door may have lain, nor did any try to frame a definite image of the scenes amidst which Joseph Curwen departed from the horrors he had wrought. Only a robust old Captain Whipple was heard by alert listeners to mutter once in a while to himself, "Pox on that." But he had no business to laugh while he screamed. 'Twas as though the damned had summat up his sleeve. For half a crown, I'd burn his house. And Antecedent. Well, there's talk of Demogorgon Abyss as like sort of the idea of Satan before all these forms that people put on that are not the full story. Before, people say before the gods, Demogorgon was before Demogorgus, or this is not terribly related now, is it? But there were beings. Well, there are beings that before humans were responding to them, they had their own existence.